The Domesday Book of 1086 records that one Gilpatrick held land in and around Middleham in the time of Edward the Confessor. After the Norman conquest, William I granted the lands in and around Middleham to Alan Rufus, one of his chief supporters and his second cousin. The first written source for a castle at Middleham occurs in 1216. However, the remains of an early castle survive to the south of Middleham, on William's Hill. This undocumented ringwork was probably built in about 1086. Although the timber buildings and defences have long gone, the deep ditch survives and is partly waterlogged. In the 1100s passed Ribald Fitzeudes, the first Lord of Middleham, who is chronicled to have died at Middleham in 1121, whereupon the lands passed to his son Ranulph Taleboys, the second Lord of Middleham, who died in 1168 at Middleham and was buried at Coverham Abbey. He was succeeded by his son Robert FitzRanulph, and it was probably either Ranulph or Robert who began the building of Middleham Castle sometime in the late 12th century, for the keep was in evidence by the 1170s. A tower was added to the east side of the keep in the first half of the 13th century, which had a chapel on its top floor. On the death of Ranulph FitzRanulph in 1270, Mary FitzRanulph, known as the Lady of Middleham, inherited the castle, and it was to pass into the possession of the Neville family on her marriage to Robert Neville, 2nd Baron Neville. As sometime in the early 14th century, the curtain wall that surrounds the keep was built to strengthen the castle's defences. Work to improve the castle was started by Ralph Neville, 1st Earl of Westmoreland, after he inherited Middleham in 1388, when his father, John Neville, 3rd Baron Neville, died at Newcastle upon Tyne. These improvements included extra garderobes. The curtain wall was raised to create first-floor ranges on at least 3 sides. The towers were heightened, with the north-east corner converted to become the castle's main gatehouse. These alterations must have been largely completed by 1410, when Henry IV stayed there while on progress in the north. Middleham under the Nevilles had been converted from a fortified castle into a palatial residence. Edward IV in 1461, on his accession to the throne, stayed for a few days at Middleham with Richard Neville, Earl of Warwick, who had inherited Middleham in 1460. In 1464, several captured Lancastrian rebels were executed in the castle. Richard, Duke of Gloucester, entered Warwick's household in Middleham in 1465 and remained there until the end of 1468. The following year, Warwick had risen in rebellion against Edward, who was captured and briefly held at Middleham in August. He later fled to France, only to return in 1471 to put down Warwick's rebellion, resulting in the defeat of the Lancastrians at the Battle of Barnet, where Warwick was killed. Richard of Gloucester then acquired the Neville lands in the north, including Middleham, through his marriage to Anne, Warwick's younger daughter. Their son Edward was born in Middleham in about 1474. Richard was crowned king in 1483, then continued to spend time at Middleham, staying there for several days in 1484 after his son Edward had died at the castle, and was probably buried at nearby Coverdale Abbey. Richard's defeat at Bosworth by Henry Tudor in 1485 saw Middleham become the possession of the crown, and this once magnificent castle was left to deteriorate. By 1538, a Crown survey reported that the battlements, roofs and chimneys were in a poor condition. The gatehouse had no portcullis, the chapel and south curtain wall were covered in ivy, and the brewhouse and buildings in the outer bailey were decayed. In 1604, James I sold Middleham Castle to Sir Henry Lindley, whose family owned it until 1643, when it passed by marriage to the Loftus family. In 1647, during the Civil War, Parliament ordered the destruction of the castle to prevent it being taken by the Royalists, but there is no record of this order having been carried out. And in 1652, Edward Loftus petitioned Parliament for recompense for holding and fortifying the castle at a cost of £2,000. In response to a Royalist threat, the castle was garrisoned in 1655 by Colonel Robert Leyburn with 30 men, and that same year Royalist prisoners were held there. In 1660, after the restoration of Charles II, Middleham was bought by the Wood family of Middlesex, and the estate was probably leased out for industrial or farming use. Accounts of the decaying but picturesque castle appear in 18th and 19th century literature. Thomas Wood built a wall around the castle and cleared some of the interior of debris. In 1889, the Woods sold Middleham to Samuel Cunliffe Lister, later Baron Masham, and around this time, the British Archaeological Association raised concerns about the castle's unsafe condition. In 1897, the second Lord Masham began to conserve the castle, commissioning the Yorkshire architect Walter Brearley to make the repairs. Date stones from 1906 with the letter M marking this work can be seen in the latrine towers. In 1926, the Cunliffe Listers placed Middleham Castle in the guardianship of the Office of Works, and it was gifted to the state in 1930. Middleham is now in the care of English Heritage. Paranormal phenomena that has been witnessed at the castle during my investigations there have included the following. I hasten to add that this is the mere tip of the iceberg regarding activity there. From the area of the keep in 1999, flashes of light, a few notes of medieval style of music, and male voices arguing in a business-like manner were heard at the entrance to the Great Hall. In 2001, unaccountable flashes of light were witnessed on the south and east faces of the keep. Near to the Prince's Tower, and along the top of the South Range, a ball of blue light was witnessed in 1999. It was playing along the top of the wall where the parapet would have been. In 2001, a flash of yellow-white light was seen at the base of the Prince's Tower. The atmosphere in the tower was always oppressive and very unhappy. The site shop, located just inside the castle near the modern gateway, a shop and a small exhibit on the Middleham Jewel. Items have been seen to launch themselves onto the floor for no apparent reason. This continued to be the most frequently witnessed phenomena during my investigations at Middleham. In 1999, there were the sounds of someone shuffling around in the exhibits of the castle and the Middleham Jewel, with nobody there to cause the sounds. During our investigation in 1999, a male upper torso and head was witnessed crossing the glass doorway, illuminated by the light from the glass-fronted refrigerator. The following morning, a peculiar smell was noted when opening up the shop, and 2 Middleham Castle mugs have been discovered lying intact on the floor of the site office. Of particular note at the castle, figures have been seen at the Prince's Tower, the keep, and the general area of grass between the keep and the castle walls. The black gates in the keep rattled violently in front of an American medium and friend. They also heard loud crashes and bangs emanating from the top of the stairs above, and the sounds of heavy footsteps on a wooden floor that no longer exists high up in the keep. Music has been heard from around the castle, as have voices. Among the many occurrences at the castle, I do have a favourite account. Maureen Bush, the custodian at the castle back in 1998, during a rare, quiet spell at the site, had locked the doors to the office and gone to the post office in the village nearby. A few minutes later she returned to the site office to find a couple waiting to pay their money to visit the ruin. She unlocked the door and saw £4.60 on the counter that had not been there before she locked the building. This was the exact amount payable for 2 people to visit the ruin back in 1998. Shortly after this, another couple entered the office and asked whether Maureen had found their admission fees, which they had left on the counter as nobody was about. Maureen is adamant that she had locked the office and had a couple waiting until she unlocked it on her return from the post office in the village. Somehow, in her absence, the door to the office was first unlocked and then relocked. If you get a chance to visit Middleham, I highly recommend it.